Hey, real quick before we get started, Content Matters with a Z is our content marketing company that helps entrepreneurs tell their own stories to those who care. And here's the thing, we think every entrepreneur that is willing should have their own content platform. And we want to help make that happen, both by working directly with entrepreneurs and by sharing our own stories, exploring the craft of content marketing. Content Matters, one piece of content at a time. Learn more at kazcontent.com. Welcome to the podcast, Entrepreneur Perspectives, introspective podcast conversations helping build and protect your business one podcast at a time. A KazSource production. Our featured guest in this episode is Lisa Sutton. Lisa is an entrepreneur, real estate investor, former Miss Nevada, and a former congressional candidate. Lisa's entrepreneurial spirit is obvious, which she showcases in her companies, Sin City Cupcakes, Ship Las Vegas, and Elite Homes. Lisa encourages, coaches, and mentors people, especially women, to take a seat at the table and make their voices heard. She does this through content, including articles in top business publications, podcasts, TEDx, and local schools. Lisa continues to stay actively involved in her community, which we get into in this conversation. And with that, we welcome Lisa Sutton. I was curious because as I was on your website, lisasongSutton.com, you have this place where you post a lot of your content, and you've published and you've been on and appeared on many different places. You're putting yourself out there. Clearly, you're involved in many different businesses. And, I'm getting ready for this episode. And there's no doubt, every time I get an episode, I get these nerves, but I see them as good nerves, right? Like the anxious nerves that you want to have. So you make sure you're prepared, you make sure you're ready. But I look at someone like yourself who's appearing on podcasts, who's doing all these things and who's done a lot in your past. Do you get any nervous energy, or what's your feeling before you go out there and partake in something new like this?
I mean, of course, it does get easier with practice. And like once you've done, they have that like 10,000 hour rule, right?
Right.
It does get easier with practice. But I think if you care about something, then like you're going to be nervous.
Yeah, that's right.
Like to some degree.
Yeah. No, I think that's interesting that you say it like that. Like it shows that you're taking it really serious. And it's kind of like, I would look at it like, well, that would be weird if I'm like, well, this is just whatever. I don't really care. I'm just going to show up. It doesn't matter how it goes. And then you don't have any nervous or any feelings towards it. And you kind of like numb to it, perhaps is what you're saying. I think that's a really good way to look at it.
Yeah. Or like setting expectations, right? At the minimum, I want it to go well, right? I want it to be a good experience, and whatever it is that you're getting ready to go on, you want to be in like a positive mindset, right? Not like, oh, like, why am I doing this? Or just that kind of mindset, because it translates.
Right. So how about when it doesn't go well? Let's say maybe the article didn't, I should have changed this around, or I gave this presentation and it wasn't as good, or I didn't deliver my best efforts. Because as entrepreneurs, right, things aren't always going to work out. We're going to make mistakes. We're not going to win every deal. Whatever is going to happen, it's not going to go that well. So how do you look back at those moments when perhaps it wasn't your best effort?
The only time I've really had that happen in like a public facing way was doing media during my political campaign. That was my first time dealing with like hostile media. I'm so used to like friendly media, right? Like,
right.
Oh, you're an entrepreneur. Yeah. Yay. You're a Miss Nevada. Yay. I'm so used to that type of interview. And it's nuts, right? Like I was prepared, but not prepared, right? Like my team had prepped me and we had done mock interviews, and they're like, you're going to get personal attacks. You're going to get this and that. And I was just like, okay, like, I don't know. I wasn't expecting it, even though I was expecting it. And so, yeah, the first time I did like a national media interview where they had like myself and then like a panelist who was on the other side of the political spectrum. And he just came in hard. He came in so aggressive. And I was like, I wasn't ready for that. And so I bumbled through it, right? And after, of course, I was just like pissed at myself because I was just like, Lisa, like you could have nailed him 7 ways to Sunday, like on points or issues or whatever. And so I'm glad that happened though, because it just taught me to like prep for the environment you're going into and not just have like blinders on of like, no, they'll be nice. It'll be fine. It'll be,
Yeah. Well, experience matters, right? I mean, I was talking to someone on our team here, Charlie, and he was on this call and he felt like the conversation shifted and they kept on just dumping questions on him. And he felt like he wasn't prepared for that when he didn't even realize like a lot of the questions to be asked were maybe coming from his side of it. Like there's two things going on. Perhaps you needed to be interviewing them as much as they need to be interviewing you to see is there even an engagement here that I want to be a part of? And that's a different side of it. But going back to that thing, experience does matter. Putting in those hours, like you said, the 10,000 hours, however you look at it, it takes time. And what you're saying is you're not like looking back and perhaps regretting what took place. Like I needed to go through that, right? I needed to
like teachable moment.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like a learning experience.
Well, you're at, I believe I saw this, it was on your story on Instagram, like you were just at the Vegas Knights game. Was that
Yeah,
was that
last night. Yeah,
last
the
night?
Golden Knights game. We
Yeah.
lost,
Yeah.
but they're
But you're there. It's kind of cool. People are coming back. I could sort of see because you had like the introduction and the lights were off, but there were some fans, not a lot of fans, right?
Yeah, I think it's like 15 or 30% capacity right now for the arena. But I mean, every seat that was available was full.
Okay.
Like, I don't know if you saw, but they had like a lot of seats like blocked off basically.
Yeah.
But the seats that were available, people were in them.
That's good.
They're excited.
It is. And that kind of gets to the thing too. Like there's these players and they're going to eventually make it if they make it to the NHL. It's a different experience, right? The speed, the strength, the expectations, the strategy. It's another level. And
no, it's crazy.
Yeah, they make a lot of mistakes. And that's how we created a platform called Sportsepreneur, and we collide sports and entrepreneurship. And it gets into so many other things because now you're starting to really get into the mind, right? And the mental health component of it, because you're going through that type of conversation with someone, the hostile media, it can take people down. I mean, we've seen it. We've seen people not be able to handle it or have to work through it. And no different than in entrepreneurship. So as you're doing all of these things, you're very busy, you have a lot going on. How do you keep I don't think the word's balance, because a lot of things we have to go out of balance to get what we want, right? It's never going to be perfect. Like, I'm going to go in and I'm going to go focus on my political career right now. That wasn't in the plan. These things are going to have to take a little bit of a side thing, or I'm going to have to delegate more. How do you, just getting into the mental side of things, how do you manage all of that? Because as you know, it's going to be the up and down.
It's exactly what you said. It's really focusing on your mental health and being willing to commit, right? Just from a mental standpoint, and knowing that like there are going to be days and time periods where you absolutely just don't want to do whatever you need to do, but you have to push through and do it, right? There's no like throwing in the towel. There's no like, oh, I don't feel like doing that today. I'll put it off till tomorrow. Like when you're in the middle of a very important endeavor and something that's important to you, like there's no time for procrastination. There's no time for laziness, frankly. Yeah. And so, I mean, even going back to your athlete analogy, I mean, I think there's a reason why athletes turn into great entrepreneurs, and it's because they have like the mental grit that it takes, right? Athletes know what it's like to push through, and entrepreneurs do the exact same thing. You need that same mental wherewithal, the mental grit to push through, like I said, the days and the tasks when you just don't feel like doing it. You have to do it. And so you push through and do it.
Yeah. No, like that's exactly right. Because when we start talking about sports and business and entrepreneurship, you start realizing it's the habits, it's the mental health, it's the accountability, collaboration. It's all of these things combined into it that lend itself to so many other things that we work on, like entrepreneurship, like you said. And the plans change, right? And you have to adjust. And I just used that line you used. Politics wasn't in the plan. That was, I believe, in one of the stories that you were quoted in. And you had to adjust, because that seems to be something that you stuck with, is you're going to be doing all of these things and these opportunities are going to present themselves. And I'm sure you've had plenty more. And then you have to make decisions as to which opportunities you want to explore even more. And you've done that over and over and over again. How did the politics thing? I mean, I know it didn't work out perhaps the winning, but maybe that was the end goal, of course, right? That's the paradox. We want to win. The Vegas Knights want to win the championship, right? We get that. But there's more than just winning the championship. I'm sure you met and learned so much along the way. How do you then say, hey, this wasn't in the plan, but the plan's changed. Let's go for it.
Yeah, it was 10 months of my life. It was like the craziest 10 months of my life. And I mean, I've done some pretty cool stuff, but like it was the craziest 10 months of my life. I finished third out of 8 candidates in the Republican primary last cycle. June 9th was the election for me in 2020. And of course, like it was a blow not to win, because for me, like especially taking on that type of endeavor, I did it to win. But it was an incredible experience. I met so many amazing, amazing people. And I consider myself fairly plugged into Las Vegas and the business community, the philanthropic community. I mean, I've been here 11 years now. I have multiple businesses here. I'm a former Miss Nevada, right? So I do feel like I'm very plugged in, but that 10 months crazily got me even more ingratiated into the community. And whether that was donors, voters, I mean, everyone in between, right? And so it was an incredible experience. I met so many amazing people. I was very blessed to have national leadership come out and endorse me and support me and pay attention to this congressional race in Nevada. And it was simply because my message was really focused on the fact that private sector needs to come off the sidelines and get involved. We have politicians who are elected officials in place right now who are making the rules that we as business owners have to abide by, right? And yet they've never in their life started a business, hired staff, fired staff, paid for their health care. Like they don't know what it's like. Right. And I just think that's such BS.
Yeah.
And so I just think it's really important for private sector, regardless of party. Private sector gets more involved in this process because usually as business people, what do? We shy away from politics, right? We're told, hey, like don't pick the side, don't be vocal about your views. You don't want to alienate your clients. You don't want to alienate potentially 50% of your clients. Like we hear that all the time, right? I heard that from mentors for so long. And it just got to a point where I was like, if we don't stand up for like small business and we don't stand up for our communities, standing up for policies that are going to be good for small business, because we are like America's employer. If we don't do that, then who's going to do that for us? Not the politicians.
Yeah. Well, there's the thing of like get involved. And you mentioned community a lot already. And you mentioned it. And like I said, when you go look at your content, I always talk about this consistent message. That's the branding. Everything that you're saying is I can get different versions of it, different pieces of that online as well, which is important, right? Because then I can talk to Lisa and be like, oh, it's exactly what she sounds like when I read her.
Yeah.
But you're saying get involved in the community.
Yes.
And then you're leading the way in doing that. Say, I'm going to show you. And if nothing else, you're going to do it. And community is a big deal because there's so many different ways. Like you talk about your love of dogs and you talk about why every entrepreneur should have a dog. That was in one of your articles. Maybe it was in the Forbes or Inc.com, right? So you have all of these thoughts and you are getting involved. Like go to your local shelter, get in the political race, do what you have to do. Was this something that you'd always done? I'm just curious because like when you look back when you were younger, was this something that was ingrained in you? Is this something that you picked up along the way so that I can get involved? I can do more in the community?
Yeah. I mean, my parents were very involved like in our church. I mean, we would volunteer at the Salvation Army on Sundays. Philanthropy was really, and it still is very important to my family. I mean, my mom has a hair salon down in Arizona, and once a month she goes and cuts hair for women's shelter. She's very involved with the community, and that's always been like a soft place in her heart. And so I think just seeing that growing up and realizing that like giving back to the community, like my parents obviously tithed to our church and they would volunteer. And so just giving back in the place where like you live and work, that was something that I saw from a very young age. And so it was just part of my lifestyle. It was not so much like I was told to do it, it was more just like it was part of our lifestyle. And so once I got into college and grad school, I still tried to kind of maintain that in my life. And obviously now being in Vegas, there's so many great nonprofits here. And even my time like with the pageantry, like that really amplified my work with the nonprofits because I was literally traveling around the entire state working with a ton of nonprofits during that time too.
Yeah. There's a lot of alignment in what you're talking about because when you have that work, whether it's your church or at the local dog shelter or in politics or in real estate or with Sin City Cupcakes, in many ways, they're all like you talk about bringing your tribe together. Because that one person that you helped out may have heard about you and they tell their friend and next thing you know, they're showing up and they want to work with you in some other endeavor, right? Clearly, you've seen that to say, it's getting exhausting to have these different things that I have to do. If I can align it all together, that's going to make your life a lot easier, which then allows you to be more helpful to those people that you're trying to help, right?
Definitely. Anyone who's like a high performer, like you have a network, right? You have a network and maybe it's across different spectrums or different buckets. People you know from school, people you know from sports, people you know from church, whatever. If you can find cohesiveness between kind of all your buckets or all your tribes, like that's the best place for you to be a connector and a bridge. I think it's really important.
Yeah. It's also very entrepreneurial, right? To get out there and go make something happen, to build something. And there's no guarantee on the end of it, right? It's like, hey, I'm going to go do this and I'm going to get paid a salary. Well, that doesn't work that way. Entrepreneurship doesn't work that way. You're all in and you could be all out if you make some bad decisions, but you love it. Like you're doing it, right? You got real estate, you got Sin City Cupcakes, you have all these other ventures. And I'm sure you have so many other ideas in your mind just right now that you're thinking about. When did, again, is that, I mean, it sounds like entrepreneurship was in your family. And I get it. Entrepreneurship's not for everybody, but it seems to be it was definitely for you, Lisa.
Well, and everything I have, like all the companies that I have operational partners in everything that I do. We have great teams. We have great staff. Like it takes so much, right? Like I know they say it like takes a village to raise a child. I would argue it takes also a village to like prop up a good company, right? Like the whole solopreneur thing, like my hat's off to solopreneurs because there's so many hats you have to wear, especially in the beginning when you're starting a company. And I just think it's incredibly helpful to have an operational partner that like you can sit down and discuss roles and responsibilities. You can bounce ideas off of each other. You can commiserate when it's just been like a terrible, awful day. Like I think it's really important to have someone because entrepreneurship's lonely. It can be really lonely at times, especially if you're laser focused. Just like you had said, sometimes your life will get out of balance, right? If you're so committed to something, of course, your life is not balanced in that moment.
Right.
So you need to have good people around you. So whether that's a business partner, whether that's great staff, make sure you have some help.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, my business partner is the operations person. When I first started, I'm like, I don't know if I know how to do these things. He's built and sold and done all these things with businesses. I want to get going. If it's not a restaurant, but like to use a restaurant analogy, when I open up shop, I want to have everything ready to go. I don't have to worry about all that. I just want to make the food and bring in the customers and let's go. And if you have to worry about all that other stuff, you might never get that restaurant, like you said, off the ground.
Totally. Yeah.
And then where are you? And then you're like months into this endeavor and it's like, you forgot to do this. I didn't know I had to do that, because I've said this many times. It's like, it's never been easier to start a business, but it's never been harder to start a business. There's so much red tape, like you talked about before. There's just so many, like, why do I have to fill this form out? I don't understand what this is going to do for anybody, but you have to do it. Like, I can't sit around and complain about it because that's a waste of time.
Regulations, yeah.
But that's life, right? And that's entrepreneurship, and you have to deal with it. That's why you work at a big company. They have staffs and teams of people that can handle that. And that's great for a lot of people. You have to be resourceful. And you talk about being resourceful a lot. And I'm curious what you think about building a team. And a lot of times it's hard. Like, well, I don't know if I want to go out and hire a team. I want to outsource. And there's the freelance economy's here, right? The creative economy's here. We can go out and find people, whether it's in another country and it's here, or if it's like, hey, someone who does these multiple works, you can outsource. What's your feeling on maybe not hiring the person inside, but actually just outsourcing and going to bring people in like that?
Yeah, I think outsourcing for needs that you have in your company, absolutely. If that's the right fit for you, and oftentimes it's very cost effective as well, why not? Like, get it done, right? Like, whatever it's going to take to get it done. So if that means you do need to outsource now, and maybe that becomes a position that you hire for later, or for a salaried position, great. Whatever it is, like if you know that you need help in marketing, accounting, HR, whatever it is, just outsource it then. Instead of worrying about, well, should I do salary? Just execute first, right? And then as it grows and builds, and as your company gets larger and your needs change, because they will, then you can decide kind of next steps. But don't have that like paradox of choice, right? It's like paralysis analysis or whatever. And so it's like, you don't move, right? You don't make a decision because you're so overwhelmed with choices. Like, you just have to pick and decide and go.
Yeah. I like how you said that right away. Just get it done. Like, just get it done. I always tell Mitch on our team, and he's out there and he's very active and he's doing all these things. And he always say, Eric, you always say, just find a way. We'll talk to these large companies and they're like, well, we can't do it just find a way. I know there's a way you can do it, or at least take it to the very edge. And if you can't do it, and then you'll have real answers as to why you can't do it. And then we can move on from there, but get it done. And you said it perfectly. It was like, well, it's just how you operate. You're just getting it done. You're getting it done, and should not like do too much of a transition there. But when we talked about before, content, like appearing on podcasts, I'm always interested to say, why would someone want to be on the podcast? I know why, but we talk to a lot of people about why would someone want to be on a podcast? Why would they want to write articles? And we get it, right? It's because they want to get noticed. They want to do all these things. But like, getting deeper with it, like, why is it important for you to have a team of people that gets you featured on podcasts, that gets you speaking at TEDx? It does all of these things. Like, why content? Why now? Why podcasting? All of that.
I want to be very efficient in the way that I share my experiences and hopefully my ability to help others. I went through a period of time where I just constantly, I still do, but I get a lot of DMs or get a lot of emails. And I was doing these kind of one-off, like giving advice basically, right? And then I turned it into, well, I should just start putting up content about this, right? And so that's really how it kind of got started. I found so much value in different articles and podcasts and things like that. And so I do think it's important to like pay it forward. I have amazing mentors in my life who have totally like volunteered their time just to, take my calls and help me through things. And so I think it's really important to pay that forward and offer advice and experience when you can. But I've found that if I want to be strategic about it, right? We all only have so much time in the day. Then absolutely, I should be smart and efficient about the way that I share my experiences and share a message that will hopefully help others. And that should be through getting booked on good podcasts. That should be through writing articles at a high level with a publication that has a large reach. So that way we're able to disseminate information quickly and again, just provide value, hopefully in a very efficient way.
Yeah. I think you say it very well when you talk about it, because you're also talking about impact and social impact. And you believe in a lot of these different things. Like, you have a passion about it and you want to talk about it and you have a platform to do it. So you might as well do it, right? And I think that's powerful. And you're looking, it sounds like, for companies that are having social impact, women entrepreneurs. And you talk about being the only women in the room. And we had an article, Kimberly on our team here wrote an article about the missteps of the NCAA in college basketball. And there's thing that started, March Madness started, and the men got all these things and the women got nothing. And it just came off and looked really bad. And so she's like, I have a passion for this. And we're like, write about it. Let's talk about it. Let's start the conversation. Those are the types of conversations that you're starting. It's polarizing in many ways, but there's so much happening right now that if you have a passion for it, if you keep it bottled up, it's going to find its way out some way, and it might be in a negative way. So explore it, dig deep, and talk about it. But that's what you're doing, right? You're talking about women in power, like being the only woman in the room and being able to walk in with confidence and have empowerment to think through these things. And you're helping other people do it. We had someone on the podcast, and mom entrepreneurs are the best. And she had all these reasonings behind it. And we loved it. I thought it was fascinating to hear that. And she was strong and powerful about it. What is it like to be the only woman in the room?
I mean, I've come from male-dominated industries, right? So whether it was law, whether it was food and beverage, real estate, shipping, I mean, it's all male-dominated. And I think oftentimes my experience has been one of underestimation. One, they always think I'm younger than I am. So then they assume, I'm someone's assistant, or maybe I'm CEO's girlfriend. Like, they just don't know who I am. And so that's fine. But at the end of the day, like, you have to acknowledge like why you're even in the room with them in the first place, right? And it's usually just to get a deal done. So I just always encourage women to not be intimidated and know your stuff, right? Like, come in hard, like with your data, come in with your stats, come in with whatever information you need to be armed with to get the deal done. I'm not a fan of like identity politics. I'm big on like merit-based, right? So whether it's a man or a woman, if they're the best person for the job, they should get the job. But what I do think is important to note is that even like as an angel investor, I sit through pitches often, right? And I get a lot of pitch decks. I sit through pitch contests. And it's interesting because sometimes I'll have male entrepreneurs. I'll have a guy who only has an idea and like maybe a logo. And he's like talking it up. He has all these grand plans and all these grand ideas. And here's all the things he's going to do with the money, right? And then I will meet a female entrepreneur who she's already got proof of concept. She already has 100 subscribers to her product. Like, she's got 2 different prototypes. She's working on a patent application right now. Like, good God, she's there. She's already launched, right? And she's telling me that she's not ready to ask for funding yet because she wants to reach 500 subscribers first. And I'm like, girl, you're ready. Like, you've been ready. And so I think there's this disconnect in a level of confidence where, for whatever reason, I've been seeing more and more, it's women who like talk themselves out of opportunity, who talk themselves out of asking others for help. And I just think whatever that dynamic is and why that is and whatever psychology is behind that, I don't know, but I find it really interesting. And I think that's part of why I'm so passionate about supporting women and supporting female entrepreneurship, because I meet these incredibly capable people, again, just on a merit-based level, right? I meet these incredibly capable people who happen to be women who happen to already be ready. I mean, they're crushing it right now, and they still feel like they're not like worthy enough.
Yeah. Well, to your earlier point, it takes a village. And sometimes you don't get to meet everyone in your village. Maybe it's a book. Maybe you read Brene Brown, or you, whatever that is that helps you, or they come across you and you're the one that kind of like push them down that, because there is a psychology behind it. And it could go way back. The person I mentioned before, Kimberly, she wanted to be a sports journalist. Well, people said, but you're a woman, you can't do that. That doesn't work. That. And so you hear that enough times, it becomes true in your mind to say, I don't know if I can do it. Or perhaps you're like, I'm going to do it. Until you have that audacity to say, I'm going to push through that. I'm going to become a sports journalist because it's what I want to do. And enough people have told me, no, I'm going to prove them wrong. But it's more about what you want. But like you said, there's something back in there. They need support. They need help. Everybody does. But like, you're looking at it, and I've seen it too, right? On the other side, to say, why would we have this assumption about this person based on their gender, their skin color, their background, where they're from? I mean, you talked about it before, like entrepreneurs, like they immigrated this country with nothing, and they started these businesses with nothing and nothing to support it. And if something went wrong, if the weather was bad, they could go out of business that next day. And so we're in a time right now where there's a lot happening, right? And you're seeing this clearly where you are. And I think that's another reason, as you talked about, as to why you're out here having these types of conversations. Because if you can put it out in front of her, I have 3 kids. My youngest 2 are daughters. And I would look at you and be like, Lisa, what would you tell my daughters today? We talk about this all the time, but I have a 10-year-old, she's 10 and 14. And they're into this stuff. My youngest loves YouTube. She loves creating content. She loves Fortnite. She's unassuming, like you would never expect this thing. And she's kind of like holding court in many ways. But they have this future. They have these things that they can do. And I know they can do it. And they're very capable of doing it. And they don't like it when someone's not treated fairly as a woman, as a young woman. What would you say to the young girls today?
There's a piece of advice that my parents told me when I was young, and it's something that's just always stuck with me. Hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. Especially now in like this Instagram era, right? Like everything you look at, there's always going to be someone who's prettier than you, taller than you, smarter than you, richer than, well, whatever it is, more successful than you. Like there's always a way to compare. And at the end of the day, you have to look at like what you can control. And you have 100% absolute control over the amount of effort that you put into something, amount of effort you put into a project, you put into a company, you put into your relationships, whatever it is, school endeavors, whatever. You have total control over the amount of effort that you put in. And so if there's a chance for you to outwork everyone in the room and whoever your competition is, you know that you can outwork them, then like do that, like put your foot on the gas and do it. And surprise, surprise, it always works out. If you are willing to be like the hardest worker, it will work out.
Yeah. So that's like what you said before, just get it done. I mean, obviously this is like something that you just live by and you do it all the time. And I think it's awesome. What are you working on right now? Like when we got on the call here today, I think you were just working on the end of your quarter and you're talking about real estate. Like what's like the one thing that you're working on to finish this week out?
Yeah, real estate's just been bonkers crazy. I mean, here in Nevada, everyone's fleeing these high tax states, right? So, I mean, every week we're working with buyers from California. So I own the Christie's International Real Estate Brokerage here in Las Vegas, along with my real estate partner. Her name's Kathy Kuo. She's amazing. And we just have this incredible team. Ironically, it's actually all women right now. We have this incredible team of women who are busting their tails 7 days a week. And so the real estate market's just crazy. I mean, one of our agents was working with a buyer. They arrived to the house that they wanted to go look at. There's a line out the door for like the viewing, right? To like get in there and look at it. They liked the house. They wrote an offer for it over list price, right? Listing agent called her back and he was like, so we have 22 offers on this house.
Oh, wow.
22 offers, not like people to see it, 22 offers. And so it's just such a crazy market right now. And so everyone's working so hard and I'm just so proud of our team. They're absolutely amazing.
Yeah. So during all that, and you have these other things going on, right? Sin City Cupcakes, I've mentioned a couple of times, that's still ongoing. Like, how do you, I don't know what the word is. Maybe it is balance, but how do you go between these different things that you have going on?
Yeah. Well, so luckily with the cupcakes, of course, I'm around, but I'm not like baking, right? Like I haven't baked in quite some time. I did bake the first like 3 years of the company, but we've been around 9 years now. And then with real estate, I started my real estate career at Sotheby's and I was there for 5.5 years. And then when I brought the Christie's to Las Vegas as an owner, my role is to like help mentor our agents and like help them navigate through their deals and do biz dev and like bring in clientele for our agents.
Yeah.
So I'm not running around with buyers and sellers anymore, but I'm totally available, right? Like my phone is always on, my email's always on. And so I'm helping our agents get through their transactions or any circumstances that may come up. So it's more just about availability and just kind of scaling up and scaling out, but overseeing and making sure that everything's still running. Because I definitely don't want to stay in everything day to day forever, right? So my oldest company now is 9. My youngest company is 3 with Ship Las Vegas. And so the goal has always been to kind of scale up and scale out.
Yeah. Well, and doing things like this matter, right? Appearing on a podcast and getting the message out there and talking about these things and thinking through things. Yeah. I mean, I see it the same exact way. I saw growth in our business when I was getting out of the day-to-day. I can still do it if I need to.
Yeah, like but you need to get out of the way, right?
Yeah. And sometimes it's like even the pandemic, it was like another level of getting out because I couldn't be there. So they had to go and execute and I had to go let them execute and they did it. And it was like, well, this is cool. And it's like,
and it worked out great. Yeah.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
It was like better than what you could have done. Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. So no, I think I love hearing you talk about that because it applies to so many people because we see it. They're like, they're so stressed out. They're so caught up in all these things. And it's hard. Delegation's hard. Letting someone kind of take that piece over is hard. But as you just said, it's necessary. And there's other ways to get involved. And last question I have for you goes back to what we've been talking about before, getting involved in your community. And you say, just go to the local shelter. If you like dogs, go help out a dog. What's another way that you think that someone who's listening to this could go and say, go get involved in their community? A simple way that wouldn't like take too much time and effort to go and say, they're going to go get involved. Because I believe once people have that habit of getting involved, of doing that thing, it just becomes easier and easier and easier to then do it more.
Yeah, like once it becomes part of your lifestyle, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many websites. Like if you just Google volunteer in Las Vegas, right? I mean, there's literally websites that will aggregate volunteer opportunities. Or if you just think to yourself, look, like what causes or things are you passionate about, right? And it doesn't have to be something heavy. I mean, obviously I support women and I have volunteered with local domestic violence shelters. That's heavy, right? It's heavy work and it's emotionally taxing, right? So not all volunteer work has to be that all the time. You know what I'm saying? Like, That's why I love bringing up the animal shelter, because if you like dogs, if you like puppies, like you can go walk dogs and that is volunteering, right? These shelters need people to walk these dogs, right? So I think there's so many different ways to get involved. If you love working with kids, I mean, Boys and Girls Club is an amazing organization. We have a great Boys and Girls Club infrastructure here in Nevada. Or you can read at your local elementary school. Here in Nevada, we have a thing called Nevada Reading Week. And they bring in people to the classroom and you read I usually do kindergarten to second grade just because like that's the most, I feel like the magical age. Like they're just so pumped to have you and they're so excited during the class. It's just so much fun. And so if that's something you do once a year and you participate in your elementary school reading week, like that's important.
Yeah, it's those little things that matter. And sometimes it's just like making dinner for somebody or talking about a topic. I mean, there's just a lot of different ways to do it. And I appreciate it. Lisa, what's the best way people can learn more about you, reach out to you? And if there's anything else that you want to add to what we've talked about today?
Yeah. My website, lisasongSutton.com. And of course, you can find me on social, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at Lisa Song Sutton.
Well, that's awesome, Lisa. Thank you so much for just getting it done, right? I mean, you just came on here and you got it done. So thank you so much.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
One of my favorite things about CADSource is the opportunity to chat with amazing business leaders and entrepreneurs. We hope you enjoyed the conversation. If you want to connect, you can find me on LinkedIn or visit us at CADSource.com. Thank you for listening to this CADSource production, Entrepreneur Perspectives, building and protecting your business one podcast at a time. Content Matters with a Z is our content marketing company that helps entrepreneurs tell their own stories to those who care. And here's the thing. We think every entrepreneur that is willing should have their own content platform. And we want to help make that happen, both by working directly with entrepreneurs and by sharing our own stories, exploring the craft of content marketing. Content Matters, one piece of content at a time. Learn more at CAScontent.com.